Okay, good evening. Welcome to our candidate forum for Washington State's 5th Legislative District Representative, Position 1, that's a mouthful, presented by Highlands Council, the Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce, and the City of Issaquah. I'm Lindsay Pinkston, Executive Director of the Highlands Council. Our original moderator was unable to make it due to a family emergency, so I'll be moderating the forum this evening. The forum is being recorded by the City of Issaquah's team and will be available to view on YouTube within a few days. Tonight, we're excited to have all 5 candidates running for State Representative Position 1 here to answer questions about topics that are important to you. We received many questions from the community, so if your question isn't asked tonight, I encourage you to use the time at the end of the forum to chat with the candidates one-on-one. Before we start, let's go over the format for tonight's forum. We'll start with introductions, and you will each have 1 minute to introduce yourselves. Then we'll move on to the questions. Please note, this is a forum, not a debate, so candidates, please don't target your opponents with your answers. There will not be an opportunity for rebuttals. There will be 8 questions, and you will be given 90 seconds for each answer. Our timekeeper, Chelsea, who's sitting right here in the front row, she will be holding the time clock. It turns yellow with 15 seconds left, and red with 5 seconds left. I've randomly selected the candidate order for answers using random.org, and will let you know the order before I read each question. Audience shortened versions of the questions will be displayed on the screen, so you can easily follow along. Are there any questions from the candidates on the format? Great. Well, let's get started. We'll do introductions in the order the candidates will appear on the ballot, which will be Jason, Victoria, Christiana, Landon, and then Mark. As a reminder, you each have 1 minute. Jason, please go ahead. I don't think you have to push anything. Do that.
Hello, hello. Ooh, that's loud. Hello, I'm Jason Ritchie. I'm one of the 5 of us that's running for Position 1 in the 5th Legislative District. I am really honored to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity. It's been a great campaign so far. I've learned a lot about the issues, learned a lot about the candidates. I think you guys have some really good choices. I think the 5th will be served really well by whomever winds up on top in November. So I am a human resources guy. I work with people every day. I bring a collaborative approach to all the issues I deal with, and I kind of want to bring that perspective to Olympia and try to figure out a pragmatic approach. Been endorsed by the Seattle Times, proud of that. Been endorsed by Senator Mark Mullet, very proud of that as well. The thing I'm kind of trying to move forward here, the 3 big issues that I'm really focused on when I jumped into this is housing affordability, making sure we've got more houses for people across the board, but within the Growth Management Act so we can protect our environment. Equally important, if not more so, protecting women's healthcare choices in our state so that whatever happens at the federal level, we're protected at the state level. And, that's 2, sorry. There's more, sorry.
You'll have a chance.
Sorry.
Victoria. Good evening, everyone. My name is Victoria Hunt, and it has been my honor to serve on the Issaquah City Council. I'm now in my 3rd term, and I would love to continue to serve this community as your next state representative. I want to continue to make progress on the issues that I know are so important across this entire district, and that includes affordable housing options that are affordable for people to live in this community. It's very important to have clean air, clean water, and protect our beautiful natural areas. Additionally, as a public school mom, I want to make sure that our public school system sets up all of our students and families with opportunities to thrive. And as a working mom, childcare and childcare affordability is also extremely important to me. I have been so grateful for the outpouring of community support that I have for my campaign. I am honored to have the endorsement, the sole endorsement of the 5th LD Democrats and King County Democrats, as well as elected leaders and Washington Conservation Action, our East Side firefighters who protect us, and so much more. Thank you.
Thanks, Victoria. Christiana.
Hi, and thank you, and good evening to all of you here. So I know that all of us have had a lot of things that we could be doing today. There's a lot going on at the national level, also at the local level as well. I will also say that ironically, I almost didn't make it to this forum today because of the really critical things that are happening in the city that I get to represent now for 2 terms, the city of Black Diamond. And that's a lot of the reason why I'm running, is because I want to make sure that we are truly advocating for and bringing a voice and agency to all regions of our growing legislative district, which now spans from Issaquah down to Enumclaw and everything in between. A huge reason for me is the fact that our cities, while we all have the same needs, they end up looking very differently when it comes to how we champion the environment, healthcare, housing, and of course, public education, which is the other top reason on which I'm running, because I am a former public school teacher and I am also endorsed by the Washington Education Association, because supporting our staff does mean supporting our youth. So that's a lot of why I'm running, but there's a lot more, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions tonight.
Thank you. And Landon.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Lindsay, thank you so much for helping to organize this and for bringing us all together for this important discussion. My name is Landon Halverson. I served as the vice chair of the King County Republican Party, and I'm running for this seat because I care about our community. I believe it's time for change, and I want to see our community head in the right direction. There's three big things that I really strongly care about, three reasons I'm running. The first, like my colleagues up here, outstanding public education. As a former high school teacher, I understand the importance of giving our kids an outstanding education. And I recognize that that doesn't always mean the public school down the street. I support school choice in addition to expanding our public school or our existing public schools so that we can ensure that kids have access to choice. I want to tackle affordability. I want to tackle education. There's a lot of issues that I want to talk about tonight, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to discuss those with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Hargrove. I am a veteran Air Force pilot. I am a fairly recently retired instructor pilot for the Boeing Company. And 8 of those last 9 years, I was a state representative in Washington State. I have been married to my wife, Sandy, for 45 years, have 2 married daughters and 7 grandchildren, and that's really the reason that I'm running to make life better, to make this state a better place for my grandkids to be raised. And also, they redrew the district boundary lines not long ago, and so the area where I live got pushed into the 5th district. And so I'm looking forward to the opportunity to represent more of my neighbors to the east.
Great, thank you. And thank you all for being here. Now we'll move on to the questions. You will each have 90 seconds to answer each question. Question 1, the order will be Landon, Victoria, Jason, Christiana, and then Mark. The question is, what is the biggest need currently facing District 5, and how would you advocate for improvement as the state representative from the district?
It's a great question. It's difficult to choose just one issue that's facing our community because there are so many crises that our state, that our county, that our legislative district is facing. But when I think about one crisis in particular that is affecting the most families in our district directly, it's affordability. Whether it be housing affordability, food affordability, all sorts of affordability. That when I look at our district and what folks are struggling with the most when I talk to them at the door, it's affordability. More and more folks are having to choose between refilling their prescriptions and refilling their refrigerator. That's not right. And we've got to figure out a way so that people aren't making that decision. I believe in lowering property taxes. Our state's running a $19 billion surplus right now. We shouldn't be raising property taxes until all of our current revenue is accounted for. I believe in cutting the sales tax from 6% to 5%. It's a small change, but it's one we can do while still being fiscally responsible and ensuring that we're funding our basic responsibilities, whether it be education or public safety. But we can bring down that tax that disproportionately affects low-income families. We need to be looking at transit-oriented development. We need to be making it easier to build homes where there's already density present on housing affordability. And then certainly we need to be working with our federal leaders ultimately to bring interest rates down and to help people get going again. So it's a mix of things that we can do right here at the state level, but ultimately I believe that affordability is our biggest crisis and that cutting taxes for working families is a good start.
Great, and Victoria, and just as a side note, if anybody needs me to reread a question at any point, just let me know. Go ahead, Victoria.
I have been talking to people all across the district at their doors, and one thing that we have in common all across the district is the need for more options for housing. I do believe that that is one of the most pressing issues facing the district right now, and something that with my local government experience I would be able to work on. I think it also has intersections with many of our other challenges. If we can make sure that we are building denser housing, housing where there's walkability, housing where there are services, then that will also help us preserve our natural spaces. And I previously, before I served on City Council, I worked as affiliate faculty in the Urban Design and Planning Department of University of Washington. So one of the things I really want to do is bring that skill set that I've been able to use as an Issaquah City Council member, bring that skill set to Olympia and work towards making sure that we have housing options for folks. I think there's also a lot more we can do with partnering with our cities to understand their unique circumstances so that we can work with them to add housing. I'm very honored to have the endorsements of 5 mayors in the district: the mayor of Issaquah, mayor of Snoqualmie, Sammamish, North Bend, and Maple Valley. And so I fully intend to be collaborative, find solutions, work across the district, and make sure that we are addressing this very pressing need that I have heard from so many community members.
Okay, and Jason.
Thank you. So I'm going to agree with what my other candidates have said here. Housing is the elephant in the room to me. I mean, we have, just look at housing prices, the way they've gone. We don't have enough supply. There's a huge demand. And when people see traffic, that's because people are living farther out, away from where they work, to have to drive hour, 45 minutes more just to get back and forth to where they work. So for me, it's transit-oriented development. And what I've seen as a failure in Olympia is a failure of the state legislators to work with and to build legislation with the municipalities in mind, to work with developers. The state isn't building houses. They need to work with the cities and work with the local developers to make that happen. And that takes a partnership. It takes compromise. It takes working together to try to achieve those goals. So I'm a big fan of building up, not out. I don't think we need more McMansions. I think we need to focus on to me, it's townhomes, condos, apartments, things like that, so that we can keep people housed and keep prices more reasonable so people can afford to live in and around where they work. The thing that kind of jumped out to me about this whole housing issue is the GMA, the Growth Management Act. We really need to focus on preserving our open spaces and building within the urban growth boundary that we've fought so hard to keep, so that we don't spread out and become like Southern California. So we need to make sure we're growing within our boundaries and keeping our wild spaces wild and keeping our services close by, and I think that'll make a difference for everybody.
All right, and Christiana.
Thank you, and I'm really glad to have this opportunity. I would also reiterate that you can't really just choose one, and I also say that because so many of these topics are deeply interrelated. So I will also say the elephant in the room is indeed on housing and housing affordability and accessibility, and I can say that as a council member in Black Diamond because people move from Seattle and then they move out to places like Sammamish and Issaquah where they're also outpriced, and then they come to our community where we do not have the funds and the resources to properly support all of our growing population. It's because of that that the GMA is largely an unfunded mandate, and that's why I was very conflicted with even being here tonight, was because we have to talk about a lot of pressing issues related to the budget going forward. And I'm doing this because I want to make sure that there are people at the table who are able to have those conversations. Our revenue source is fundamentally broken and also inherently inequitable, as we rely far too much on property taxes, which brings to the other crisis point in our city, which is about our youth. We are bleeding out professionals in our public school system. We are a desert in communities like mine when it comes to childcare. When we know that we are not supporting our youth, what future are we truly investing in our communities? So the fact that we have a revenue source that's setting it up so schools, even in places like Bellevue and Seattle, are shuttering their doors, that's how we know it's a funding issue and not actually a money issue. And that's what I want to make sure that we can deal with, is not only making sure we have more voices and perspectives to make sure that all boats are rising in a sense, but also that we're putting that money towards basic human social infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mark, last but not least.
Well, my short answer, of course, is affordability, but I'm going to tie it in with all of these things because they are so interrelated. We have housing. Let's talk about that one first. The Growth Management Act is proven that it raises the price of houses here hundreds, literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, because when you limit the area where you can build houses, you limit supply, which of course increase prices. And there are other factors there too. We're not friendly to businesses around here, both large and small. We rate, and they have to pass on the cost to their customers. And related to that is retail theft. We're among the highest in the nation, and so you go through a store now and you see all those glass or plexiglass-lined counters, and when you want something, somebody has to go get that. That costs the business money. Grocery prices, all sorts of things are interrelated there, and the public safety. I'll leave it there.
Okay. Question number 2. The order will be Mark, Christiana, Victoria, Landon, and then Jason. Ballot Initiative 2117 would repeal the 2021 Climate Commitment Act, establishing the state's Cap and Invest program to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. If the initiative passes and the law is repealed, what measures should the state take to combat climate change and promote environmental sustainability? And that's to you, Mark.
Okay. From the very beginning, God told us to be stewards of the earth, and I believe that wholeheartedly. We need to take care of our planet. But we do need to keep in mind how much what we're doing hurts our neighbors. For example, if we became carbon neutral in Washington State, which is very expensive, it costs us, the state, money that we could be investing in education, in our transportation system, and taking care of our homeless, all those kinds of things. That's money that's taken away from those purposes. If we could go carbon neutral for an entire year, China would wipe that out in a day. And so we have to be cautious that we're not harming our fellow citizens just to make ourselves feel good about doing this thing if it's not actually going to get anything done actually in the world. So we are one of the cleanest climates or environments in the world. I think we can proceed as we're doing, just being smart about our investments, not wasting money on things that actually don't produce the results, and still take care of our neighbors.
Okay. Christiana.
Thank you. It is a concern what would happen if Initiative 2117 failed. I endorsed the campaign to protect the Climate Commitment Act, but for me it's always a yes and. Because in this current iteration, we're really not engaging enough stakeholders in the process. I wasn't a fan, for example, of the fact that tribal sovereignty was vetoed out of the current form of the bill. And also communities such as mine are really being left out of the conversation, as well as middle-class workers and people whose livelihoods do depend on some natural gas and other livelihoods. I do think that ultimately our solutions need to make sure that when we talk about something like a just transition, that we're really making sure that it's equitable for all of us and that we're empowering the communities who are most likely to be stewarding the lands and our livelihoods. So because of that, I think that should that come to pass, that we see the CCA go away, we do at least have that other opportunity to make sure we can get it right more. And by that I mean this is an opportunity to find more sources of revenue that are more equitable, that rely less on the gas tax and other inherently not fair tax systems, and actually put it towards other ways of finding money so that we can pay for our roads and other vital infrastructure that the Climate Commitment Act is actually helping to fund. So that's a huge part of it for me, but also I know that that's going to take a collaborative effort. But for me, first and foremost, it's always about really instilling an opportunity for greater tribal sovereignty and not less.
Okay. Victoria.
Firstly, I am completely opposed to the initiative to repeal the Climate Commitment Act, and I would encourage you all to vote no on that initiative, and let me tell you why. This is a cap and invest program that pays into our communities millions of dollars. We know in Issaquah that there are, for example, projects for clean energy solar panel installations that will be creating more resiliency for our community. And those projects will be very much in jeopardy if we don't have the Climate Commitment Act, because not only does this act cap the pollution from these polluters to make sure that we aren't making the climate change problem that much worse, but additionally it invests in our communities, and that makes a real difference. If it were repealed, which was part of the question, We will need to make sure that we can continue making progress on this issue. We are already seeing, unfortunately, that wildfire risk in our communities is increased. That's resulting in higher premiums for insurance, for example. Also, smokier summers, which results in lost work days for outdoor workers. I was just hearing from a individual the other day about how it's impacting his ability to work outside and to breathe clean air. So we will need to make sure that we are continuing to invest in our community's ability to transition to cleaner energy with or without this act, but it will be much more difficult without this act.
Okay, and Landon.
Thank you. In 2023, Washington was one of just 4 states nationwide to see an increase in carbon emissions as a result of utilities, one of just 4 states in the nation, in spite of the CCA. When I look at the CCA, I see a highly ineffective bill that has failed to do what it sought to do and has punished middle-class earners in the process. I don't believe that the CCA has been effective in reducing emissions because, like I said, we're one of just 4 states that saw an increase. That's unacceptable, and it tells me that what we're doing is not working. I believe that if we truly want to see carbon emissions decrease, we need to be investing in the energy resources that don't produce carbon. Things like nuclear energy and hydropower that are abundant here in Washington state. Both of those resources, by embracing both of those resources, we bring ourselves closer to energy independence, we bring the cost of energy down, and all while ensuring that it's carbon neutral, because nuclear and hydro are both carbon neutral. So we're really able to serve all of the needs of the community, right? By ensuring that we are reducing our emissions, bringing down costs, and making sure that the energy is accessible. I also support tax credits to retrofit homes so that folks who voluntarily want to retrofit their homes have the ability to. I don't like a heavy top-down approach. Let's make it easier for folks who care about this issue, like so many in our community do, to do something about it.
And Jason.
Okay, so pretty straightforward. I oppose repealing the CCA. I think it's working. I think that we need to focus, well, let me answer your question you asked, because what do we do if it doesn't pass, or if it is repealed? I think there's things we could do better, but I definitely think that we should keep it in place. What I would like to change, or what I would like to add to it, best case, or if it does become repealed, rebuild it, supporting businesses as they transition from carbon-based, power energy to clean energy. What does that look like? What are we doing to do more of that, and how do we get businesses to buy into the CCA going forward? I think the carbon exchange idea works. I think we're going the right direction. I think it's making money. It's actually been more profitable than we thought. I think we need to really focus on the benefits of clean energy investments. What does that actually translate into on a daily basis? I think we haven't done a good job of selling the CCA as a community, and those of us that support it, we're kind of talking to ourselves. I think we need to kind of get it out there in the world more and talk about what it really means and how it's going to actually keep Washington green for another generation and generations after that, right? So focusing on the investments means recognizing that our air and water are improving, and it is going to be something we can think about in generations to come and feel like we did something good for my kids, their kids, and going forward. So strongly support the CCA and make sure it doesn't get repealed.
Okay, the order for question 3 will be Jason, Christiana, Landon, Mark, and then Victoria. There has been a lot of controversy related to pursuit restrictions for police officers in Washington state. Some say high-speed chases are dangerous for everyone involved, while others argue not pursuing encourages criminals to run from the police. What specific policies or changes do you propose regarding police pursuit laws to effectively address this issue while ensuring community safety?
So it's a pretty straightforward one for me. I'm glad that I don't have to take notes. I can answer pretty straightforward. I oppose just speeding and pursuits. I think that's a mistake. I mean, if a bad guy gets away, that's a bad thing. Let's start with that. That's not a good thing. But when we have an accident or police speeding down the road chasing after a bad guy, that creates a whole other series of potential risks to the community. So while I don't want bad guys getting away, I would rather that we get an idea of who they are, we got a license plate number, we got a make and model of the car, we got a pretty good idea of who they are, we're gonna get them. We don't need to chase them down and create all kinds of risks across the board and on highways and streets. So to me, it's pretty straightforward. I don't want my kids or my kid who's 19 now driving. It scares me every time he gets in the car, and it worries me. He's a good driver, but who knows what's going on as you're flipping down the road and, chaos happens, right? So I certainly want to make sure our highways and our roads are safe, and I think chasing criminals down in high-speed pursuits is not going to help us create safer roads.
Hey, and Christiana.
Thank you. So one of the roles that I have also with the City of Black Diamond is I'm on the Sound Cities Association's Regional Law, Safety, and Justice Committee. And I did this particularly because I wanted to make sure that I was learning more and also facilitating conversations with my city about how we can be more smart on safety. And I do that especially because I do care about how we reduce crime in a way that actually really gets results. And so I will say one of the things that I was really proud of is that our city was one of the first to adopt the flock camera system. There are still some inherent concerns that I think we should be vigilant about when it comes to surveillance in law enforcement. All of that is only as good as the laws we have on the books, so make good choices when you're voting. But also it's because I really wanted to make sure that because I don't think that anybody's life is worth a stolen 2000 Mazda, that we should still be giving law enforcement tools and equipment to be able to pursue people with an investigatory manner. The more that we have these kinds of systems, the more that law enforcement can collaborate and work together on finding the criminal using evidence rather than hearsay or suspicions that could often be based in bias. So I was in favor of that. And also what I will add is we do need to invest more in crime prevention. A lot of these crimes are because of crimes of lack of opportunity. And so I'm really passionate about making sure that we invest more in community and therapeutic courts. I successfully championed that in the City of Black Diamond. We're expanding it now. And also finding other pathways to get people out of the recidivist system where they are in that heightened adrenaline space and they're stealing and they're always in this constant
Okay, thank you. And Landon.
Thank you for this question. I absolutely support this initiative to once again allow police to pursue violent criminals. First, I want to clarify what the initiative is. This is not a broad-based initiative that all of a sudden gives every police officer in the state the ability to pursue. That's not what this initiative is. It allows police departments to allow their officers to do it. So what the state did was they said, we know better than you, police departments. We're looking at the same data, but we know better than you. We know the data. We know the truth. You as police departments don't. So we're going to take away this privilege that you've otherwise had. All this initiative does is take it back to the police departments to say, if you look at the data and determine in your communities that this is the best practice for reducing crime, the state will not stop you. That's what this initiative does, and that's why I support it. I think there are very valid concerns about police pursuit in certain situations, but I trust our officers and our police departments to address those issues. I don't think we need a heavy top-down approach from the state saying, you, law enforcement, don't actually know what's good for your own community. We as a state are gonna come in and tell you. I don't think that's right, and I certainly don't think when you look at crime over the past 3 years has been anywhere close to effective either. We have some of the highest crime rates in the country. We went from being consistently below the rest of the country in crime to matching their level. So it hasn't worked. We need change, and we got to support our police by voting yes on this.
Thank you. And Mark.
I have to agree wholeheartedly with Landon on what this bill does or the initiative does and what effect it would have. It's part of a broader problem, and that is the runaway crime all over the state. And if we I liken this to, I think it was in 1995, Rudy Giuliani became mayor of New York City, and he implemented what's called the broken window theory. The idea being that you don't let people get away with things, the small things, the broken windows or other things like that. If you let them get away with those, that leads to a crime-ridden society, and things just escalate, and you get murder, rape, all those other horrible things. But if you address those smaller crimes, and then you clean up the neighborhood, and you don't get this this escalation. In fact, you get a de-escalation. People live in a safe society, and it just breeds good stuff. So stopping people, and in fact, I think we're like 4th highest in the nation for auto theft. Might even be higher than that. Anyway, it just doesn't make sense to let them get away with that and do the things that are going to lead to more and more crime.
And Victoria.
I was City Council President in Issaquah in 2020 and 2021, which were very difficult years for the community for many reasons. But one of the things that happened during that time was we did see an increase in retail theft. And Issaquah actually, during those years, we made a concerted effort to work with our retailers, to work with our stores, our small businesses, as well as with our police and our community to make sure that we were taking actions to work together on this issue and to reduce retail crime. And actually, our approach to that made the news, and I encourage you to look it up. I deeply believe that we need to be collaborative in our approach. We need to work with our police to make sure they have the tools they need to do their job. And I also believe strongly that we need to make sure that pedestrians are safe. And I think we can do that. I support what the state did with this bill, which is to allow for more time, so they are going to be able to further work on this. And I do believe that we can make sure that we can also take preventative crime measures, such as ensuring that we have therapeutic courts where people, once they leave the legal system, as we have in Issaquah, they are able to access services, and we can reduce that, reduce crime before it occurs.
Thank you. Question 4, our order will be Christiana, Jason, Mark, Victoria, and Landon. If elected, which 3 legislative committees would you like to join and why?
Thank you. So we do get this question a lot, I'm sure we all have, and I know also as a rookie, you kind of go where they send you, right? But I am really happy to say that wherever I go, I'll be happy to make that splash. I have served on every committee. On the Black Diamond City Council, I'm currently the chair of the Community Planning and Development Committee, but also I know that great work can be done with local government, for example, in the state legislature, and really with anything that touches youth and youth welfare, right? So especially the K-12 education system, one would be really important for me, as well as also the early childhood learning one, because that is such an important inroad to making sure that we can invest in child care and affordable, accessible child care, especially to make sure that we're setting up our youth for success. Also, I really care a lot about making sure we can implement public safety legislation that is holistic and that is encapsulating the needs of communities like mine. Going back to local government, that's really the same exact issue, is a lot of our policies are created more for larger urban areas like Seattle or Issaquah, and it's really not the case that a lot of these policies are made with us in mind, and a lot of those decisions are being made about us and without us. I do believe that with that collaborative, have you thought about this? Have you thought about these kinds of challenges? That can benefit every community in the state even better, because we are bringing more voices to the table. I can at least say that when I'm going door to door, and especially in places like Enumclaw, people light up because we know what we need and we want to fight for them. So put me in a committee, I'll do the work.
And Jason.
Yeah, I don't know that we're going to get out. I think I broke it, sorry. Is that working now? What am I doing wrong?
You dropped the mic, man.
Sorry. Can everybody hear me okay? Sorry. Yeah. I won't be a minute and a half, it's cool. They will put us where we go, being newbies. But if given an option, if given a choice, I would love to serve on local government because I think there's 3 current or former city council members. Former city council member are in Sammamish for me. There needs to be better collaboration between the state and municipal governments, for sure. And I think bringing that city council experience to Olympia is going to make that much better collaboration. You got to look at these laws that are passed at Olympia and say, how's this going to be implemented at the local level rather than just a fiat from Olympia? So I think that's going to be really important. Transportation. I mean, with Representative Ramos moving to the Senate, hopefully, we're going to need a voice in the Transportation Committee. And I think with 169 and 18 and all the changes that are coming on 18 right now, and we definitely need somebody to focus on our transportation corridors. And we need somebody at the state legislature that's going to be focused on transportation dollars coming to the 5th LD. For me, just speaking from my own personal experience, I'm a former small business owner, and I think we need to create opportunities for small businesses and entrepreneurs in our state to be able to essentially streamline that process to get your business going and to branch out and start doing that and living that American dream. I did it and it was great, and the opportunity of a lifetime. So I think that's something that we could work at the state level to make it easier for people to start their own business. So I'd really like to focus on small business administration.
Thank you. And Mark.
I appreciate. There we go. I appreciate this question because as I was on 3 committees in the legislature, I'll talk about those 3 committees which I'd like to return to. First one is the Transportation Committee, and I learned a lot there. I was the assistant ranking member on that committee. Some interesting things are that it costs $10,000 per inch of light rail. Think what you could do with that money to our actual roads that most of us use. So that's one way. The second one is the Education Committee. Both my wife and daughter taught math, at high school math. And in fact, just today, my daughter just got hired at Auburn Mountain View High School to teach math. And so I'll be intimately involved there. And then the third committee is the Higher Education Committee, which again I was on. I had a bill while I was there that would get the state need grant to approximate, I forget, I think it was about 50% more students without costing the state a single dollar more. I can talk to you later about that, but I'm passionate about getting that one done. And so those are my 3 committees.
Thank you. And Victoria?
I would want to serve on committees where I could bring a unique perspective and work with others to make fast improvements for the district. And one of those, I believe, is in the Education and Early Learning Committee. We have been very well served in this district by Representative Lisa Callan, and I'm very honored to have her support, and she is now working on the budget. So I would love to continue to make progress on making sure that our public education system works for all our students. And I also represent the perspective of a working mom and a mom of young children, and would love to bring that perspective to Olympia. Additionally, I have previously modeled the electric grid for Breakthrough Energy, so I have professional experience in the kinds of infrastructure improvements we're going to need to achieve our clean energy goals. So I would really love to bring that experience to Olympia and make sure that as we are setting these clean energy goals, that we are building out our clean energy infrastructure in a just way and making sure that we are keeping jobs in the district. Additionally, environment is near and dear to my heart, and I believe it's one of the reasons why this area is such an amazing place to live. So I would love to continue to serve in that capacity, protecting our environment for current and future generations. I have a PhD in ecology and would love to bring that science-based lens to making sure we are protecting our beautiful natural spaces.
And Landon?
This is a great question. Certainly for me, one committee that I would be honored to join would be the K-12 education. It's an issue that's very near and dear to my heart, both as a teacher, but also because I believe it's one of the most important duties that our state has, is to ensure a high-quality public education. Our state legislators have done a great job over the past 10 years of increasing funding for education. It's double what it was 10 years ago. But in spite of that, scores aren't any higher. Results aren't any better. I want to get to the bottom of that. I have reasons why I believe that is, but I think that serving on that committee would really help me and help our state to dive into that issue. We need more voices on that committee who are saying, wait, hold on. Sure, before we approve this next billion or this next billion, let's ask what exactly it's doing and how exactly we're going to spend it effectively so that we don't see the dollar sign going up and results going down like they are now. Appropriations is another big one. Obviously, when it comes to dealing with taxation and with spending, appropriations has a large hand over that, and certainly I would be honored to be able to work with my colleagues on budget priorities and on spending priorities for the state, because currently I feel that they're a little bit out of whack. I think that we're spending a lot of money. We're trying to find, right, with our $19 billion surplus, we're trying to find ways to plug it into the system when we really should be returning it to taxpayers. And our state doesn't think about it like that, in spite of the fact that most blue and red states do.
Thank you. Our next question, the order will be Victoria, Mark, Landon, Jason, and Christiana. Last year, the U.S. Surgeon General issued an advisory warning of the profound mental and physical health consequences of the current widespread epidemic of loneliness and isolation in the United States. As part of the framework to address this issue, he calls for state and local governments to enact pro-connection public policies. As representative, what policies would you support to enable more social connection? And that's to you, Victoria.
All All right. One of the things that I really enjoy about doing this work, both serving as an elected official and also campaigning, is that I get to meet people from all across the community with all different perspectives. And I do think that through our community venues such as this one, we can share opinions and we can have conversations. And I do believe that that sort of community conversation is really important in terms of making those connections, learning what other people are thinking, and feeling less lonely. I absolutely have seen this, especially from the isolation that resulted during the worst years of the COVID-19 pandemic. We were really seeing an increase in a lot of the mental health needs and behavioral health needs resulting from that. And so I very much believe that co-response programs, for example, as we've implemented in Issaquah, where folks with behavioral health training and behavioral health training are able to respond when somebody is in crisis and there's a 911 call. I believe that that is very important. I also believe that venues such as this one and having those one-on-one conversations is also important. And lastly, I think that for our schools, I very much support making sure that we are facilitating learning opportunities and facilitating opportunities for our schools to also reduce their loneliness and increase connection.
Thank you. And Mark?
There are a lot of things that government can do to provide supports and agencies and all of that kind of stuff, but I truly believe that our biggest problem is the breakdown of the family. It's hard to find, you hear of a mass shooting or something like that, it's almost always somebody being raised by grandparents or a single parent or different kinds of things. And I think that we can, so in a kind of roundabout way, what we need to do is do things that strengthen the family. Take away the stresses that contribute to stress in the family. You know, like the things we talked about already: affordability, public safety, things like that. So as the safer and more cohesive the families are, the better as a society will be. There will be less loneliness.
And Landon?
This is a good question, and it's one we talked about last year when when Victoria and I were running for city council here in Issaquah. And I think back to my answer then, and it's ultimately we have to look at ourselves and the choices we've made. We closed our schools and churches, we cut bus lines, we doubled the price of gas, we incentivized massive sprawl, and then we sit here and we say, well, why aren't people connected to each other? Because we brought ourselves to this point. I look at our leaders who brought us to this point, and we have to recognize that it's been a public policy failure, and that part of bringing people together is making it easier to get together. When you make it harder for people to physically move around, to move from city to city, when you incentivize sprawl, close our public spaces, it's no shock that people are lonely. And unfortunately, many, church attendance, club attendance, those things have not reached pre-pandemic levels. There's a great book some of you may know called Bowling Alone. And if you've read Bowling Alone, you know about the decline of social clubs, of things like the Lions, the Eagles, in our communities. They talk about bowling clubs. And I really believe that our state would be well served if local government did more to incentivize those things, more to get people back in the Eagles, the Lions, the different groups that not only provide camaraderie, but that help serve our community in many different ways. So I think that we need to recognize this as a public policy failure and move forward with something new.
Thank you. And Jason?
Let's see if I can not break the microphone here. I'm going to say this. I think things have changed a lot since COVID, but things are kind of moving that way. I don't think government should be telling people to hang out or not hang out. That's just me. Hang out if you want to hang out with your neighbors. Be social, don't be social. It's up to you. It's a free country. Do what you want to do. I think where we have seen some changes is, and I'm living this just every day with my kids, is social media, devices in your hand. It's kids. And there's a generation of kids that are growing up this interactive, weird world where they have avatars and all that. I don't necessarily get it myself, but they're all into it. They're playing games with people. My youngest son's got friends in Mississippi. He's cackling. He's got his headset on. He's having a great time. He's socializing. He's learning those skills, but it's not in person. So I think we did what we had to do during COVID. And that was a really, really scary time. And it was very, very, to me, it was, we had to do what we thought we had to do. And I don't think there's a whole lot of reason to try and second guess the social protections that we put in place. Having said that, I think there's things we can do with the schools. And I think that the government can do something, the state government can do some things, helping out kids that may be in distress, that are loners at school, that need that actual help, the social workers in school. Getting kids to put down their phones so they don't have them in school, I think that's a big deal. Making sure kids are socializing again at the academic level, and that'll help be better adults.
Thank you. And Christiana.
Thank you. I'm really excited about this question because as a former public school teacher, I actually left the world of teaching in the last quote-unquote normal year in 2019, and it was largely because I was already seeing the unaddressed mental health crisis that we were observing in our schools. It doesn't matter the zip code, the needs are the same, even if they kind of take on a different manifestation, shall we say. When I worked in schools, like when I was working as an ELL teacher, primarily with students from refugee and asylum-seeking backgrounds, trauma was there, right? But then if you go up the hill and when you're working in the Tahoma School District, there's still trauma, there's still loneliness, there's still a mental health crisis. And that kind of unaddressed need is why teachers are leaving the classroom and why we have lost so much institutional knowledge of how to take care of our youth over the years. Investing more in what we already know professionals in childcare services and in our public schools are demanding and demanded for decades is how we can also help address this. I'm the government lead for Enumclaw Youth Empower. When I say I'm coalition building, it's because I've also grown the membership of this organization so that there are different stakeholders in the Enumclaw School District working together with law enforcement, faith community, business leaders, all working on how we can address the youth mental health crisis. The only other thing I'll say in addition to championing multicultural supports in these programs is also when we talk about things like social media use, I think we should be holding tech companies more accountable. There are ways to do this and also to work with professionals, again, who can best advise that in mental health.
And our next question, our order will be Jason, Landon, Christiana, Mark, and finally Victoria. As our area continues to experience significant growth, what specific policies or initiatives do you propose to ensure the availability of affordable housing for all residents?
Ooh. So kind of a repeated question too, sort of, a little bit maybe. But that's, okay, so I don't want to restate what I said, but obviously that's the most important issue that I see right now, and housing is number one. It's something that I fought very hard for in Sammamish, and I think it's something that the state legislature has done some good things, right? But how we implement those housing issues and how we keep people closer to home and at work, it's going to help with traffic, it's going to help with gas mileage, it's going to make everything that much closer, and it preserves those open spaces, the wild spaces, the mounds of Sound Greenway, so that we're not, growing out that way. To me, just take Issaquah Highlands, for example. I love Issaquah Highlands. It's perfect. I mean, I'd love to be able to afford to live here, but that kind of model where you have essentially your Safeway, you got your gas station, you can get your haircut, you can go to dinner, you have everything really close by. You never really need to leave. I mean, the schools, it's kind of cool. It's kind of like a self-sufficient little community. I love that idea. And you don't necessarily need to have a car, but it's kind of hilly in some places, for me at least. So I really think that we can build up, not out. That's like the idea. So if we can get like a light rail station, a transit center like we have in the Highlands here, that kind of transportation corridor, if you need to go to work in the city or you got to catch a bus or a train or whatever, you need to have a car, you can, but focusing on keeping people building in a certain geographic area so that we're not spreading out. That to me is what we could do at the state level, working municipalities to make that happen.
Okay, and Landon.
Yeah, so a little bit of question too, but I'm excited because I can go into some more specifics about how we actually want to solve this problem. There's two distinct groups when it comes to housing affordability, and I do feel from a policy perspective it's important to look at them differently, renters and owners, the way that you help renters and the way that you address, or the way that you help owners. Sometimes you can help both at the same time, but not always. When it comes to helping homeowners, I support, like I mentioned, a freeze in property taxes. That's going to help with housing affordability, right? Folks who are being increasingly taxed on unrealized gains in their home, who want to stay there and continue to live there for as long as they would like. So certainly for them, I support lowering property taxes. One of the things I support for renters is providing tax credits to landlords who voluntarily lower or freeze rents in their their tenants. Democrats refused to give this a hearing last session, and I think that's a real shame. I think at the very least it deserved a hearing to talk with landlords about ways that we could help them lower or freeze rents. I support creating an expedited permitting process for middle-income housing. I support a Homes for Heroes program to provide down payment assistance for police officers, for military, and for other community servants so that they can afford to live in the communities in which they serve. So whether you are a homeowner, a future homeowner, or a renter, we absolutely need to be looking at affordability, and there are plans for that.
Thank you. And Mark?
I already mentioned that the Growth Management Act drives up the price of houses by hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's huge. So we need to scrap that, come up with a better, a more reasonable plan for our building process. Again, supply and demand, it actually works that way. We have multiple friends who have moved out of the state who were builders. And the reason they left is because we make it so difficult for them here that they have left. Again, supply and demand. We're losing builders. It makes it more expensive to build houses here. So the regulations, a variety of things. Also, just in general, the business climate on small businesses, anytime we drive up costs or difficulty for any small business, that all trickles to the builders, for example, for their supplies and so on. So there are a lot of things we can do to bring down the cost to make housing more affordable.
Great, and I apologize, Christiana. I went out of order.
No
So
worries.
You go ahead. You have the floor.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, so housing affordability is truly at a crisis level. I'm happy to say that I am endorsed by the Urbanist newspaper, which is kind of like the leading publication that really gets all policy wonky about these kinds of topics because of my leadership in these spaces, and also because I did it. I was a champion on working on these policies, even when it was tough, and even when I had to go it alone, because sometimes we didn't have the votes in our council, for example, to be fully supportive of House Bill 1110, the missing middle housing bill. I was in favor of it with, again, that caveat of yes and, because how is it going to work for our cities? I was dismayed, for example, that with that provision, we are essentially hamstrung in communities like mine because we've let HOA neighborhoods not have to build affordable housing. That essentially takes away all of the master plan development in places like Black Diamond, where I'm also not understanding the unique circumstances of why my city can't always build out and up, or is not able to build up rather than out, is because of some extenuating circumstances relating to how tall our fire ladder can go. These are the kinds of things that I want to make sure that our cities are equipped to deal with, because that's how we can make sure that all of our cities are getting on the same page when it comes to affordability, so that we're not seeing people move to Black Diamond and all of a sudden having to access a food bank that's running out of resources. That's what's concerning to me. Also, rent stabilization is a big thing for me, and transit-oriented development, where places like mine should be getting transit. More on that, but I'm out of time.
And Victoria.
I think there are three large buckets of things that we need to work on for making sure that as we grow, and absolutely we are definitely a growing region, that we are creating options that are affordable for people to continue to live here. One of them is regulatory reform. So for example, inclusionary zoning. We have found in Issaquah, for example, that that's not enough, but it is an important part of the puzzle. I am supportive of things like HB 1110, which made it possible for cities to have to add the capacity around transit-oriented development, and also to make sure that we are adding missing middle housing types, which are really important. Those are the duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and those sorts of units, which we know our community members really need. We also need to foster the workforce and the ecosystem of developers who will be building these. I'm very honored to have the endorsement of many of the workers in the trades that will actually be building the housing that we need, including the electricians, iron workers, and sheet metal workers. And then also we need the funding. I believe in expanding the Housing Trust Fund so that we're making sure that we are supporting cities. The cities are not able to add this housing alone. We do need support, especially for those deeper affordability levels. And also, I will end with, I'm going to add one more, which is innovative ideas like community land trusts. I would love to see us get more creative about how we add housing.
And our next question, question 7, the order will be Victoria, Landon, Christiana, Mark, and then Jason. Many Washingtonians believe that we are currently facing a childcare crisis and that the trickle-down effect is costing our state economy billions of dollars every year, with only 28% of children under age 5 in need of childcare being served, according to the Washington State Department of Children, Youth, and Families. This number drops down to 20% in our own district, with 10,000 children under age 5 in our district in need of childcare, but only 2,000 are being served. If elected, how will you approach the childcare situation facing our district and our state? And that is to you, Victoria.
Thank you. I am extremely honored to have the sole endorsement of the Children's Campaign Fund. This is a group that finds champions that will fight for affordable childcare, accessible childcare in the legislature. And I, as a working mom, have experienced the childcare issues accessing, especially when I had an infant and was going back to work and looking for where I was able to find accessible and affordable childcare. It really does limit opportunities for families. It does also result in longer travel times. For example, when there are childcare deserts, which absolutely happens across our district, that results in less time spent doing something other than being in traffic, which is always a good thing. So I absolutely will be a champion for childcare and making sure that we have more opportunities in the district. One of the things that I think is exciting is that there are opportunities for the state to support family childcare or smaller daycares, and that's a small amount of funding that's available for that right now, but I think especially where we are seeing consolidation of childcare centers and there are these large childcare deserts, we could really use some of those opportunities to make sure that family members who can provide those services or neighbors that are able to provide those services in daycares are supported.
Thank you. And Landon.
Absolutely, as the question implied, and as Victoria said, we are facing a massive child care shortage in the state of Washington. And I truly believe that a large part of that is due to the massive overregulation of the child care industry in Washington state. We make it very, very, very difficult to open and operate child care centers. Victoria is absolutely right that we're seeing a massive consolidation of child care centers. And it's because the only ones who can afford to keep up with the regulatory environment that our state has imposed are the biggest providers. It's reminiscent in many ways to the big banks after the crisis in 2008, with 1 in 3 community banks closing over those preceding 5 years because they could not keep up with the regulatory issues that they were facing. So I believe that we need to deregulate. One specific, this is just an example. If you open a child care center in Washington, you cannot accept toy donations if they have ever been used. They have to be, everything has to be new. Everything has to be new. And it doesn't matter if those rules make it so that people can't afford childcare, but that's what the rules are. And so as we have created an environment where only the wealthy can afford childcare. And I think that that is really unfortunate. And it ultimately comes down to the fact that the state has imposed these regulations without even considering the fact that folks cannot afford to provide that type of care or afford to receive that type of childcare. And that's a huge issue.
Thank you. Christiana.
Thank you. So for me, at least, I can also say that my community is one of those childcare deserts, and I do think that part of the solution can also be how we get more creative on things like the Growth Management Act and making sure that communities like mine that are food deserts, childcare deserts, healthcare deserts, and more can actually be given the holistic care that they deserve as a community. I don't have kids, that's my choice, but even if I were to, I know I wouldn't be able to afford them because of the cost of childcare, and that's where I truly empathize with the fact that we are at a crisis point right now, is that we shouldn't have to have that option or opportunity taken away from us simply because of cost. So for me, especially, I want to make sure that we're investing more also in more creative opportunities, and I turn to some of what I'm seeing right now in the city of Enumclaw that we'll be getting to represent now. We have a Birth to 5 center that's tied to the Enumclaw School District that is doing marvelous things for kids of all ages 0 to 5 and also from different income levels. On the other hand, I'm thinking about a different bond that failed, which was on the community center. While that was geared more towards like the older generation, there could be so much great opportunity to create more funding and opportunities for that kind of cross-pollination. So within district, but also taking outside, I'd love to see that. Also, our region is growing and diversifying, and I want to make sure that we're investing in and supporting the kinds of multicultural land and culturally sensitive childcare. Also, I think we have a part where our small farmers can play in getting more food and nutrition to those places as well.
Thank you. And Mark?
I have to agree again wholeheartedly with Landon on the where government. At my time in the legislature, I heard case after case where government's heavy hand shut down perfectly good, safe, wonderful child care facilities and stuff. So reducing supply again drives up the cost. So I just have to go that direction. And then the other thing, of course, is whatever we can do related to the other questions is bring down the cost of living. So just bring down costs everywhere, and that will help them folks be able to afford the child care.
And Jason?
Yep. So we definitely had childcare issues when my wife and I. Well, she had the kids. I helped out a little bit early, but we both. It's a hard life, man. You definitely need two incomes in this country, in this neighborhood, in these areas, right? It's hard to make a living if you're just on one income. So both parents working. Childcare is a real life issue. It's probably the most frequent thing I hear. Going to pick up the kids from childcare when you're knocking on the doors. That's like the thing people are doing when they're coming home from work, and it's good. It helps kids get socialized. I think there's a really important aspect to that. But to me, supporting childcare is supporting middle-class living wage jobs. If you don't have childcare, and we have a huge need for it, we have deserts, and we have all kinds of issues right now that we're going to need to tackle when we get to Olympia to make it happen. We really need to remember this is how we actually help people be able to live here. So this is a real life middle class living wage jobs issue. I think there's state level incentives to encourage people to open new child care facilities. I fall on the side of making sure that child care is safe, well regulated, in a quality way. I don't want my kid going somewhere that's not safe, not quality. I want to make sure we have state level across the board, just a absolute making sure the kids are safe at a daycare thing. There's nothing worse than going to work. I mean, I've lived it. When you don't know. I want to make sure my kid's in a safe environment when they're in a daycare, and I think that's something we can do at the state.
Thank you. And on to our last question of the evening. The order will be Christiana, Mark, Jason, Victoria, and finally Landon. So let's dream for a minute. Imagine that our district's fairy godmother handed you $5 million to spend on behalf of our community. What would you do?
All right, $5 million. It's so funny. We had a question like this actually with the city council appointment recently because we have this happen a lot. And we asked that for our council members too. But honestly, there are so many things we could be investing in. And top of the list for me is on our long overdue projects in the public education sphere. In a lot of ways, I'm running because I care about the Washington State Constitution, which says that public education is our paramount duty. In a lot of ways, it's paramount in name only. And we've really kicked the can down the road in terms of investing in some really basic investments still in our school system, which is, I think, why we're seeing the kind of crisis level that we're at. We need to be addressing more with funding our school nurses. We need to be paying more to make sure that we are lowering the class sizes. I am serving in a school district where we have a 70-year-old building that is molding and leaking, and people say that's the same bucket that I had when I went to school here. That should be unacceptable, that in this day and age we have schools like that, because we are so tied to property taxes that we can't actually pass bonds to make sure that we're investing in our youth. But also we need to invest more in youth mental health counselors. Also, we have paraeducators in my district that I've talked to at the doors where the increase in para funding came too little too late. They left the classroom because they can't afford to pay rent. We are at a crisis point, and that's why we're seeing our schools set up for failure, and we're seeing that downward spiral today. I'm putting it in the schools first and foremost.
And Mark.
It's kind of a fun question because I don't even have to imagine it. Our government has billions of dollars. Our state government has billions of dollars they don't know what to do with. I'd give it back to the people.
Okay, and Jason.
It's interesting. I think kind of thinking about what I've heard from people on the doors and kind of thinking about what my I'm a dad first. That's, how do you relate with the world? I'm a dad. That's what I think of my kids, and my role here and why I'm running is to make sure that they have a Washington that they can love and live and respect and enjoy as they get older. Think about the question you asked earlier about socialization. I think our communities miss, maybe I'm dating myself, but a place to hang out when you're a kid, a safe place, not necessarily video games, maybe a couple, a safe place that you can go and hang out in your community and be around other kids your age. We really don't have that anymore. And, maybe put down your phone and talk to somebody, maybe meet somebody, maybe interact with somebody, maybe go, play a little basketball or ping pong or just interact with people your age. That kind of teen level, $5 million is a lot of money to me, but it's not a lot of money in a big, municipal sense, right? It's not going to do a whole lot, but I do think we could do something at a city level, municipal level, to help kids interact more, get them away from their phones, help them be out there with kids, get them out of the school setting, but in a socialized setting. I think that's going to be paying dividends for us in terms of helping our kids grow up in a safe community and realize they're part of a community, not part of just an online community. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Victoria.
Thank you. I think that one of the most pressing issues that cities are struggling with right now across the district is the change in needs for emergency management. So we've seen over the last several years, for example, that we are at increased wildfire risk, and so we are now having to develop evacuation plans for our neighborhoods. We are having to make sure that we are able to harden our homes against fire, and I think that it's extremely important that we are supporting our communities across the district in adapting to the current emergency risk that we're seeing for things like wildfire. I'm a certified emergency response team member, and I think we absolutely have the capacity to address things like wildfire, but at the same time, there's regulations as well from the state that we need to be planning for these things, but there's not the support for our cities. So because safety is so important to the community, I think that would be where I would use this funding. Additionally, $5 million, it doesn't go towards building something like a new community center, but it could fund cooling centers across the district. It could fund some of these services that we need for when there really are those extreme hot days, which we're increasingly seeing. And so I think I would put that money towards those needs.
Okay, and final answer of the night, Landon.
This is a good question and it's a fun one, but ultimately if somebody came to me and said we have $5 million for you to spend, my first question would be, where did you get the money? Because ultimately it came from somewhere. There is no such thing as a fairy godmother who drops millions of dollars on Olympia. There's no such thing, and our current leaders may treat it like that, but that doesn't mean that's how it works. Ultimately, it's taxpayers that fund every choice, that fund every program, and we have to be cognizant about the ways that we are asking taxpayers to step up. As Mark mentioned, we have a $19 billion surplus. Another thing, our state lost $1.5 billion of COVID money, just lost it. It was our Democratic state auditor who found that. No accountability, it's just gone. And so we talk about, well, we need more funding. I ask, well, first off, maybe keep track of the $1 billion you lost, then come and ask for more money. Because if you're losing billions of dollars at a time and can't even tell me where it went, that doesn't make me inclined to say you need a few billion more, especially when in the other areas of government spending, like on education, where we've doubled funding, it hasn't actually produced any results. Our test scores are lower than they were 10 years ago. And it ultimately comes down to the fact that there's no accountability in Olympia. There's no accountability for results. And when you ask our leaders, well, what did you do to fix this problem? Most of the time they'll tell you, well, I spent this much money. I got this much money for it. They won't actually tell you how they solved the problem, just that they got a lot of money. That should concern you. It concerns me.
Thank you. I want to thank all of our candidates and all of you for attending this evening, as well as those watching from home. Voter pamphlets and ballots have been mailed, so be sure to vote by primary election day, August 6th. Feel free to hang around tonight and ask any lingering questions you may have for the candidates, and have a great evening. Thank you.